Over 20 years, you meet a lot of people. There was one in particular, a fellow odds changer, that we just knew had to be a part of our mission and our story. So if you would please join me, Dr. Robin Avelar Salle.
So I want to tell you that I'm a very important person standing before you. You must be very impressed, but not for the reasons you think. Above all my accolades, besides the fact that I had 4 babies in 5 years, can I hear it for the moms in the room? I know. Besides that, my most impressive accomplishment is that standing before you is not the one time, but the 2-time Belmont High School drill team captain. I know, it's almost too much to bear. So, with that said, I'd like to introduce you to a little girl whose name is Precious. Aptly named, don't you think? Adorable child who started in kindergarten and struggled from the first day. She just didn't fit exactly the mold of the school. Was a little bit distracted according to the teacher, a little bit unfocused, kind of slow learner, personality type. And so what the teacher did was to convene a student study team. A student study team is a structure that schools have up and down the state, which is a meeting that is held with the teacher, most often the parent, a school psychologist, very important to the meeting. My niece is a school psychologist. Plug for my niece in the room. Thank you. I'm just saying. And so, and then what you do is you sit there and you problem solve. You try and understand the situation of a student and you come up with a response. So a student study team was held for Precious. And during the meeting, the parents shared, Mrs. Cantor was present, that she had some challenging conditions at home. It turns out that she was raising 5 children by herself. Life was hard. And that her husband, Precious's dad, was what we like to call in our family away at college for 5 to 10, maybe 7 with good behavior. And so he was out of the picture for a while, which made it difficult at home. And in the conversation, the decision was immediately made with great compassion to assess the child. There's probably something going on with her learning, given all the difficulties that she has. Sure enough, she was assessed and found to be learning disabled. That label was given to her. And I don't know if you know, but there are different categories of learning disabilities. You can have autism, or you can have dyslexia. Well, there's another category, and the other category is called a specific learning disability, SLC. And what a specific learning disability is a non-specific learning disability. I don't know what to tell you. It's a specific learning disability, and what it means is, I don't know why this child is behind, they're just behind. That's what it means. And we're gonna try what we can. We don't know what to do, but we're gonna give it the old college try. So she was labeled as such, and she started to make some progress. They put her in a special category, which gave her some additional help. They pulled her out of class to get some small group instruction, and they minimized the work that she got, made it simpler. Very worried about her self-esteem given her family conditions and so forth. And she made progress, but very, very slow. And what the school folks said was, well, we're lucky she made any progress at all, seriously. Look at what this child is contending with. Well, wouldn't you know, Precious becomes a 3rd grader, and in comes her little sister. Meet Valerie. By the time Valerie came, it had been 2 years that the school knew about the Cantor family situation. Things like that spread like wildfire at a school. And they knew that pretty soon that Valerie was her little sister, and the kindergarten teacher said, I'm pretty sure that this child is probably suffering some learning challenges as well, just given the circumstance. So she was too little to assess. Our laws are such that unless it's something extremely obvious, very, very outlier kind of condition, you don't assess students for learning disabilities so young. So what they did at the school instead was just to preempt that. And what they did was they decided to make school easier for Valerie. So let's reduce her homework. let's reduce the goals, let's give her fewer problems to work on, because they don't want her to feel that struggle and that failure that inevitably probably envelops her life on a daily basis. So that's the situation with Valerie. Now, Precious is in the 4th grade, and they have an annual meeting, and they convene as always, and they review her records, and they see how she's doing, and there's only one difference, and the difference was that there was a new sheriff in town. So what happened is a new assistant principal showed up on the scene. If I didn't mention this earlier, this is a true story. And a new assistant principal came up on the scene, and she had a completely different point of view and completely different disposition. And so the team went around the room, and they talked about her present level of performance and how she was doing, and they said she met all her goals, and they were very happy that she did. And the assistant principal started to be happy till she dug deeper in the paperwork, and then said, wait a minute, she met all her goals, she's in the 4th grade, but these are 1st grade goals. Do you see? 1st grade goals. So yay, she learned all her sight words. She's still not literate. She's a 4th grader. And so the assistant principal asked the team, where's the mom? Why isn't she at this meeting? And they said, you know what? After what we heard about her family situation, we just haven't bothered her in a few years. So she wasn't involved at all. So the assistant principal closed down the meeting really quickly and said, you know what? Let's go meet Mrs. Cantor. Made an appointment and went to go meet with Mrs. Cantor, who was a lovely person and certainly had a difficult life. And in the conversation, Mrs. Cantor said, you know, my husband is still away at college, but Precious received 2 gifts from him that are very profound. One is her love of art. And Mrs. Cantor pulled out a letter that the daddy had written to Precious with this amazing artwork around the border. And she said Precious inherited that gift. The other gift was her love of music, and she was quite the vocalist. The mom just beamed when she talked about how beautifully her daughter sang. I would demonstrate it for you because my mom raised me thinking I could sing, but since then my children have corrected the record, and so I think I'll just leave that be. And so what the assistant principal said was, wait. Let's go back and have another meeting, but just with the educators. We need to renorm this place. And the assistant principal sat down and said, okay, we have this case, we have this child. What conditions would be necessary for Precious to be on grade level in 2 years? Because in 2 years, she's off to middle school. And one of the sad realities of our system is that from elementary to middle school, there's a chop. From middle school to high school, there's a break. They're not seamless institutions. And so if you're going to fall through the cracks, that's where you're going to fall. And so she said, if she's not on grade level before she leaves us, she's going to get pegged as a student with these issues. She'll be put in certain programs, the decisions will be made for her, and her life will be altered forever. So what conditions would it take for Precious to be on grade level in 2 years? So you can imagine the team sat back and said, Precious? Yes, Precious. And the assistant principal asked a couple of questions, which I posed to all of you. And I pose them to myself every day. One is it reasonable to expect that a child like Precious be on grade level? Okay. Is it inevitable that some students, by virtue of their socioeconomic status, the language they speak at home, the crime in the community where they live, their ethnicity, their family values, is it inevitable that some groups of children just have a low ceiling on their academic achievement? Now, I would say, of course, we will say, no, never. I'll never say yes to that. But then we're faced with data like this. There are 6 million kids in California across 1,000 schools. Half of them have kids just like Precious who struggle academically, where close to half or more are not reading on grade level. Half. And guess where they're mostly located? And guess who actually goes to those schools? And so if you look at that over and over and over again, we're mere mortals, sadly. you start to make a connection. I was once asked by a board member, Robin, I hear all your beliefs and I believe your success stories and all that, but fundamentally, these are poor kids. How are you going to change that? As if money equates to academic achievement. And I'm happy to report that at least in this case, that wasn't the case. So that was a good thing. Another data point that's sobering to me, let me turn this way. If I were to ask you to turn to someone you like, change seats if you need to, and answer this question, what % of students in California ought to be university eligible upon graduation from high school? What % of students in California ought to be university eligible, not community college, four-year institution, upon graduation? Ready, set, go. Thank you. Clearly you like the people you're sitting with. Now let me ask you, what % do you think actually does graduate university ready? Okay, land on a number in your mind. There will be no public flogging today, so we won't ask publicly. So here, do you want the answer? No. How badly do you want the answer? Okay, all right. Such a needy group. Here we go. Actually, 50% of white students in the state of California graduate four-year university ready. To me, that's low. Isn't that low? That's not to say they have to go to a four-year university. That means that that's an option. 70% of Asian students, though that number is a small n, it's a small sample size compared, and it's 35% for African American and Latino kids. And the worst part about it is of those 35%, only a sliver actually matriculate into a four-year. I don't know about you. Can just by a show of hands, I'm going to pretend I can see you in the lights. Have you ever tried to get your kids through the application process into a college? Okay, and you're still here to talk about it. Yay! I did it 4 times, and I still didn't do a very good job every single time. It's very difficult to navigate that. You have to know things. You have to know people. You have to have information. There's a social network you have to have. So not everybody has equal access to that. Even if you're qualified to go to a four-year, only a sliver actually go from some communities. So you look at that, and you do say, well, maybe it is inevitable. But I'm going to tell you that that is not supported by research. So let me tell you a little bit about research, my favorite thing to talk about. By now, my children usually stop blinking, and I know they're just being polite, but I'll talk about research anyway. Intelligence is not a fixed thing. We should please have a campaign to get rid of the word potential. If you say someone's reached their potential, that means you know that what that limit is. How do we know someone's potential? How do you know that? They've reached their ability. How do you know somebody's ability? That's an unknowable. So what we've learned from the research is that intelligence is dynamic. It changes. It grows. It's malleable. It is true that nature has something to do with people's success. That is not to be denied. But honestly, the research shows that the more challenged a community or family is, the more impact schooling has on their outcomes. Just imagine, we have them 6 hours captive. If they leave, they go to kid jail. You can't go, you have a captive audience. So we know from the research that intelligence can grow. If you think that there is a predetermined fixed potential, then you make decisions based on that. If you don't believe that, then you make different decisions. I'll tell you, I was at a presentation once, a huge high school, very, very low performing, as many are, happened to be mostly Latino and African American kids. And somebody stood up and said, but Robin, this was an educator, and I love him, he meant well. I light candles for him every day that he sees the light. And so he stood up in front of this whole room and he said, I hear what you're saying, but what you don't understand is that Latino culture just doesn't value education. And so no matter what we do here at school, we'll always have to contend with that. Honestly, it took my breath away. I've told this story before, but whenever people talk about kids, any kind of kids, I think that they're talking about unicorns. Because if I think you're talking about children, other people's children, I get so angry I'm no longer credible. You don't want to see me like that. So I thought, wow, unicorns don't value education. That's unfortunate. But so I said, well, after a moment, I guess I'm really glad that my Latino parents didn't know that we didn't value education. Maybe I wouldn't have gone to Stanford and gotten a PhD. Good thing. And this meeting is over. Everybody out. Superintendent, stay. I'm going to talk to you after. So there are these ideas that people have. And what I want to say, it's not the predetermined fixed ability that limits kids. It is the conditions. And conditions in society are systems. There are systems in society that advantage some and disadvantage others. That's just true. It's just one of those truths. Well, schools are just systems too. And we have systems within the school that advantage some and disadvantage others at different times. I'm going to tell you why we know it's true. There's magic that happens when you change the conditions at a school. Let me show you two schools. One is Hoover Elementary School. That's a school that we partner with. And the other one's a similar school in the same neighborhood that shall remain nameless. Because in 2 years, they're going to be up there being compared to another poor school because they're going to be doing great. But right now, they're a new school to us. I won't name it. Our PE team is right here. They know exactly who we're talking about. And in both schools, they're virtually in the same neighborhood. The kids are 100% poverty, 100% kindergartners come with no English. They're all Hispanic. It's in the highest crime area of New York. Where am I? Gosh, in Los Angeles, MS-13 territory, very, very, very bad. They do exist in some places. And a long history of low achievement at those schools. The one school in the neighborhood that we just started partnering with now is at 15% proficient. That means 15% of those kids are on grade level. At the low bar, there's a low bar and a high bar. The school that we've partnered with, that we no longer work with anymore after 5 or 6 years, they're on their own now, they're in year 9, they're at 55%. Now, lest you say 55%, that's not very high. The state average is 45 for kids like those, not for kids like those, period. So they surpass the state average and they're just exceeding every expectation for that population. The kids are the same. The conditions are different in school. It's magical. Let me give you another example. We'll compare Linwood Unified right next to Compton to another district not too far, both 100% poverty students, students in poverty, and mostly Latino students, a small percentage of African American in South Central, very poor outcomes for forever. The similar district has 22% of the students graduating university ready. So they graduate from college and they can apply if they chose to. In Linwood right now, it's 48%. Remember I told you for Latino and African American students, it's 35%. They exceed the state average. Now, as a board member told me, but Robin, how do you do that when they're still impoverished? How do you change the poverty? You don't. You change decisions in school. You give them opportunity and access in school. That changes the outcomes. So I ask you this. What comes first? Do you have to change the beliefs of people before you change the systems, or vice versa? I'd like to say that we change everybody's beliefs. In fact, let me lie to you. We change everybody's beliefs. The truth is that we don't. And sometimes, even all of us, most of us are imperfect, unless you're drill team captain. Twice. There are beliefs that we haven't even articulated to ourselves yet. We don't even realize we think certain things until something confronts us. Every time we say, wow, you accomplished that, what you're saying is, I don't think you could do that. You know, there's subtext. So what we do instead is we say, no, we're just going to change the conditions. For example, with Precious, instead of remediating her, saying that we're going to have her crawl before she runs, Precious and all students and all schools, we said, no, we're going to accelerate them. First, they don't get removed from the core program. They have full access to grade level experiences because your brain can grow. Even if you can't read the words on the page yet, you are a comprehending, thinking human person. And then meanwhile, the skills will develop. There's only you have a choice each time you arrive at a situation where you either have a student or a school or a district that's struggling. You either go the remediation route, and fundamentally what you're saying is, I hope we get any growth out of them. Like, come on, let's crawl a little faster. Or you go the accelerating route where you say, I expect every darn one of you to make it, and we're going to change the conditions until that's the case. We're going to keep working it, we'll collect data, we'll monitor closely, and we're going to make it so that you make it. Some of the things that we do often is we say, well, let's group all the kids who struggle together. By far, of all the things we do to mess up kids in a well-meaning way, it's that. The truth is, the best chance a struggling student has to do well is being seated next to the student body president, or better yet, it's infectious. The last thing you want is a whole classroom full of kids who struggle. And the older they get, the more that struggle turns into other behaviors that have nothing to do with achievement that hold them back. And we do those kinds of things all the time. Every time we use language like, well, they're doing the best they can. Yeah, but they're failing. What we're saying is we don't believe. So Precious's program was modified to include these conditions, which are really changing the systems, changing her goals to be on grade level, having her access them equally, then giving her outside of the core time extra support for preview and review, and then after school. Sorry, not because I'm here, but we can't say enough about having an after school or extended day experience that aligns right with school. This is what schools tend to do. If you don't understand what I'm telling you, I'm going to say it slower and louder. So, do you know what the failure rate is for first-time algebra takers in the state? I have to end that question with is, and that's bad. It's 50%. 50% of all first-time algebra takers fail. An appropriate response now would be like, ugh, ugh. So only in some neighborhoods, what tends to happen is they say, ugh, what's too hard for them? So let's do it slower. Let's do Algebra 1 over 2 years. One semester over 1 year, second semester over second year. Do you want to know what the failure rate is for algebra takers who take algebra over 2 years? I have several places, I couldn't make this up, that does algebra over 3 years. Do you want to know the failure rate?
What about the dropout?
Yeah, but they're gone. Yeah. It doesn't work. What we need is to accelerate them, and not this way, but this way. So every child can learn, but not in the same number of minutes. So then during the day, we need to maximize the time, and then we need to extend the day. That's the formula. And it's magical. Doing that to Precious, she made amazing gains. True story. By the time she got to 5th grade, she stood up at the culmination ceremony and sang her heart out to not a dry eye on grade level. Little side note. Precious is now in 2nd grade. Her big sister just rocked the world of the school. And the school officials decided to reconsider the case of Valerie. Wouldn't you know? After reassessing her, she's a typical little girl with all the quirks thereof. Somewhere in the middle of her class, there were kids that were stronger and kids that were weaker. All those extra supports that pulled her away, that remediated, were taken away, and she was given the same systems as her sister and did very well. And that's precious. So now I'm going to get on my soapbox. Here's what we know. And I'd like you to take a deep breath and in your best recitation voices, read this out loud with me. Ready, set, go. Every system is perfectly designed to get the results it's currently getting. I'm going to give you 30 fast seconds to talk to your table about that. That's whether the outcomes are good or bad. Read this and absorb it for 30 seconds. Ready, set, go. Finish up your last thought, please. On 3, 2, and 1. Let me give you a great example. I have 4 beautiful children. Not to embarrass them, but my 2 beautiful daughters are here right now. I know. I guess I just did, huh? When one of my 4 children acts up, they'll tell you they get the smackdown. Or as we call it, the chancla, which means the slipper. That's a magical slipper. Whoop, 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 whoop. It goes upstairs, downstairs, and it'll get you. So when one of them acts up, smack that one down. When all 4 are acting up at the same time, it's a systems issue. You'll have to look in the mirror and clearly accept the responsibility that it's your husband's fault. Or something like that. I'm sorry, we're short on time, so let me move on. My husband and co-founder of Principals Exchange. Thank you, mi amor. This is what we know. Here's my soapbox. School systems are defined by the decisions that people make. Grown-ups make decisions, then that becomes the system. But decisions are based on beliefs. So in the end, if you were to connect the dots, it's beliefs that drive student outcomes. As we never wait for the beliefs to come, we just kind of nudge our way into changing the systems, wait for the outcomes to change, and then people warm up over time. What we do is we believe. We believe so much that even those who don't believe, we believe for them. We believe so much that even students who don't believe in themselves anymore, we believe for them too. We believe to our very core that every child can reach grade level and become college ready. Every child. The research shows that 95% of all children can be reading on grade level by the 1st grade. 95%, Allington. The only students that doesn't apply to it are those at the extreme levels that have conditions that preclude that. But the majority of students, the far majority of students who are identified for special education are in that specific, non-specific category, which means we just don't know why they're not doing well. And then we partner with schools and districts. We study what the systems are, never people. Remember, systems are decisions. Underneath that are beliefs. And then we work with the system from the inside to change those systems, and then outcomes change. So say this with me, please. Ready, set, go. We change. We and we. And that's all. That's on Tuesday. Because this is truly what we believe. We believe that every student is entitled to the premium education that only some are currently afforded. And it's just not okay. And so that's what we do. Oh, wait. One more footnote. Precious left the school. Valerie's now in 2nd or 3rd grade. And guess who shows up on the scene? Her little brother, Gabriel. The thing is that everybody knew about the Cantor family by then, for sure, and these remarkable Cantor girls. And so his arrival was expected with great anticipation. When he got there, the AP waited assistant principal about a week and then said, all right, give it to me. Tell me about little Gabriel. Oh, let me tell you about Gabriel. He's excited, he's enthusiastic, he's interested in lots of things. He likes all kinds of activities, a little bit distractible at times, forgetful, a typical little boy. And that little boy was never referred to anything. He did very well at that school. Ladies and gentlemen, the way every good Mexican song ends, we're going to end now. Da da dun dun dun. Thank you very much.